Hello, my name is Ronald Mac Haskett, and I am here to present to you about content regulation and censorship in video games. Now, before I start, I would like to begin with a little disclaimer. The objective of this presentation is to inform about the topic, so I'll try my best to remain as unbiased as possible when presenting. I do have personal opinions related to this topic, but I will try to keep as neutral as possible in appropriate places while sharing my thoughts where appropriate. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin. So censorship was not always around video games at their inception. In fact, the first major case of content regulation came in 1992 when Mortal Kombat and Night Trap was released. These games were highly criticized for their depictions of violence and nudity, which was thought to promote voyeurism. The video game industry understood that there needed to be regulation for these kinds of things, so the industry came up with the Entertainment Software Rating Board, or the ESRB for short. The Entertainment Software Rating Board is a system that gives an age rating to a game depending on the content in it. The ESRB proved to be the standard for American content regulation in video games and was enough to keep the government intervention out of the video game industry. One particular federal case I want to point out is Brown versus Entertainment Merchant Association. This was a case that was a challenge to a 2005 California law that prohibited the sale of mature-rated games for minors. This law mainly targeted games that had the player shoot anything that resembled a human shape. However, the law was deemed unconstitutional due to violating the First Amendment rights of the customer and the medium. Video games also fall into the same protection categories that books and films get. The significance of this ruling shows how video games are protected from United States government censorship and will serve as a reference to understand other ways that censorship has affected the video game industry. Despite all of the debate whether or not the video game industry should be the one to regulate themselves, the industry and retailers were doing a decent job of regulating themselves. These statistics from the Federal Trade Commission are from a survey done with undercover teens to see how effective the ESRB is. These teens were told to buy mature-rated games and report if they were able to do so. Retailers deny most of these kids due to the process of enforcing the policy being done at the point of sale. I know from personal experience that retailers would ask for my driver's license when I try to purchase an M-rated video game. So this is to show that statistically, the ESRB is working and retailers are enforcing it. The call for government legislation usually stems from real-life examples of violence that are correlated with video games. Such examples include the Columbine High School shooting in 1999, which was attributed to the fault of video games due to the game Doom being mentioned in the notebooks of shooters Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Another example is of the DC sniper case, which was referenced a few times against video games due to one of the snipers, Lee Boyd Malvo, explaining that he learned to shoot from Halo. These are examples of correlating issues to causation to explain how these tragic events could occur. One example of an organization actively trying to censor the spread of violent video games is the Chicago Transit Authority. This branch signed a contract to commercially advertise for the game Grand Theft Auto 4 to be put on their vehicles and buildings. However, they decided not to advertise it due to the increase of shootings in the Chicago area. The publisher took them to court and won the case, resulting in the game being advertised for the 6 weeks that was initially agreed upon. You may notice that one of the pictures that I included is a warning label about how video games cause aggressive behavior in teens. I was initially going to include an American Psychological Association study done in 2005 about how video games did have a link to aggressive behavior. However, upon further research, I discovered that the APA deemed the study inconclusive in 2015. The question remains, how does this affect the video game industry? Well, censorship seems to have benefits and consequences to the industry internally and externally. One example is that large companies can overcome the legal barriers that smaller companies may not be able to. This results in large companies being able to strong-arm their competitors to get their product on the market virtually hassle-free, while smaller companies struggle heavily with regulations. Another way companies can either benefit is through IP litigation, and where companies can use their assets to seize or halt other companies' productions. One such example is when UK broadcasting company Sky tried to sue Hello Games for the game No Man's Sky. The company wanted them to remove any mention of Sky from the game, however they lost the case, but it was enough to disrupt development of the project. One of the biggest consequences of censorship is when games go international. Among game companies, regions do not get prioritized for distribution if companies do not provide the substantial revenue that is worth the time to edit the game for the country's regulation standards. For example, Microsoft decided not to market Gears of War to Germany because of Germany's strict guidelines on violent video games. I will leave off this presentation with a quote from Supreme Court Justice Anton Scalia, which explains why it is difficult to see how much one can censor entertainment and how it can result in unnecessary consequences. The reason why I wanted to go over this topic is because I believe it is important to see how censorship can affect the things that people are really passionate about. It is not very clear where censorship is for the safety of the people and when it impedes on their rights. In my presentation today, I have given information and examples about how content regulation and censorship in video games. Now it is up to you to decide where you stand on the issue.